How many here can remember who Balaam is and his core issue? Does it jump out to you? Anyone remember Balaam from the donkey talking to him? That's probably where most of us remember him from, because he's going to get on a donkey, and there's going to be an angel of the Lord with a sword that Balaam can't see, but the donkey can see. And so one time the donkey goes out into a field and he beats it. The angel moves to another location. Then another time he presses up like probably against a rock side, trying to get away from the angel, and his foot gets crushed, and he beats the donkey. And then a third time, the donkey can't get away, so the donkey just lays down underneath Balaam, and the angel of the Lord is right there, and he beats the donkey again. And so the donkey starts talking to Balaam. Well, we're going to go back and look at a couple of things at the start of that story, and then a couple of things at the tail end of that story, because there's some insights there that I think are worth looking at. Balaam is a man that is known in his day to be a man that when he blesses people, God blesses them. And when he curses people, people are cursed. And however it is, Balak hears about that characteristic. Now, Balak is the leader of the Moabs. The children of Israel have come out of Egypt. They're defeating pretty much everyone that's in their path. And Moab is afraid. They've heard the testimonies of what God has been doing on behalf of the children of Israel. And he's like, this is a massive group of people. We hear the testimonies. We don't think we can defeat them. Why don't we hire Balaam to curse them, and then we'll be able to defeat them, or we'll at least be able to protect ourselves and to protect our land. So the prince, Balak, sends his men to Balaam. He doesn't go himself. And they say, hey, we want you to do this. And he says, I can't do that. God won't allow me to curse these people. And so the men go back to Balak. And Balak says this in response to his men, to go back again and tell him this. This is Numbers 22, verse 16. Please let nothing hinder you from coming to me, for I will certainly honor you greatly. In other words, I will pay whatever you're asking to pay if you'll curse these people, because it's that important to me. Now, Balaam's a unique character, and I'm still kind of trying to fully work out the grid that I put him in, but there's a couple of things I notice about him. He obviously has some sort of gifting or anointing on him that God has given, that when he blesses people, God blesses them, and when he curses people, because he's known for that. It's his reputation. But there's something that's not quite right about his heart that's a little bit hard to fully understand when you read the account, particularly when you read the account in English, because there's one passage in particular that there's a Hebrew word that's being used, and when you understand what that word can mean, it kind of changes a little nuance about how to possibly understand the account. So Balak sends his men back to Balaam, and this is Balaam's response in Numbers 22, starting in verse 18. Though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not go beyond the word of the Lord my God to do more or less. Now therefore, please you also stay here tonight, that I may know what more the Lord will say to me. So at the start of this, you hear him saying, even if Balak gave me just a ton of gold and a ton of silver, I can only do what God would tell me to do, but let me go ask God if it would be okay if I do it, because I'd really like that money, is what I hear him saying. Then in the next verse, the next two verses, I'll read them and then I'll double back and share a word with you and we'll cover it again. And God came to Balaam at night and said to him, if the men come to call you, rise and go with them, but only the word which I speak to you that you shall do. So Balaam rose in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the princes of Moab. Now, the Hebrew word called, it's translated as called in the New King James, has an idea behind it of pleading with someone according to Brown Drivers Briggs. It has the idea of accosting someone according to Strong's Hebrew. So it appears that God said to Balaam that if these men threaten you or intimidate you, you can go with them. However, when Balaam woke up in the morning, the Bible does not record any interaction between Balaam and the men. Rather, it appears that Balaam used the encounter with God as a green light and saddled his donkey. Therefore, God was angry with him. So he talks about the money, he says to the men, stay here tonight, let me seek God on the issue. And then the 20 and 21 again say, and God came to Balaam at night and said to him, if the men come to call, if the implication of that word means to accost or threaten, because remember, the men are already there. So it's not as if God's saying, well, if the men come, because the men are already there. If the men threaten you, then go with them. If the men come to call you, rise and go with them, but only the word which I speak to you that you shall do. So Balaam rose in the morning, saddled his donkey, didn't have that interaction with the men, as it says, and went with the princes of Moab. So we see he gets on his donkey, the three interactions we talked about. The first time the donkey goes into the field, the second time the donkey crushes his foot up against a wall, the third time the donkey sits down under him. Picking up in Numbers 28, Numbers 22, 28. Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, what have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times? And Balaam said to the donkey, because you have abused me, I wish there were a sword in my hand, for now I would kill you. So the donkey said to Balaam, am I not your donkey on which you have ridden ever since I became yours to this day? Was I ever disposed to do this to you? And he answered, no. So the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way, with his sword drawn in his hand. And he bowed his head and fell flat on his face. And the angel of the Lord said to him, why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come out to stand against you, because your way is perverse before me. The donkey saw me and turned aside from me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, surely I would also have killed you by now and let her live. So here's the angel of the Lord saying that Balaam's way is perverse. There's something going on there, because you read it. If you read the account in the English, well, it appears God gave the green light. It's possible that there's a meaning other than that word called, meaning what it is, but there's something going on in Balaam's heart that it appears he wants to go, although he's going to go, and every time he is asked to curse the Israelites, he's actually going to bless them. But when you pick up in Numbers 31, verse 16, we see that there's something that took place that you don't see in the heart of the account. It's going to be up on the screen, Numbers 31, verse 16. Look, these women caused the children of Israel, through the counsel of Balaam, to trespass against the Lord in the incidents of Peor, and it's referring to Baal of Peor. And there was a plague among the congregation of the Lord. What is the interaction? Well, if you go back to Numbers 25, verses 1 through 3, it says, and it's going to be up on the screen, and there's going to be some words in parentheses on the screen. Those words are me interpreting deeper what's there. What the parentheses are not in the actual text, but I'm adding that in so you can understand what is actually being communicated. Now the children remained in an acacia grove, and the people began to commit harlotry at a heathen sacrificial feast with the women or the sacred prostitutes of Moab. They invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people ate and bowed down or sexually joined with them in their God. Verse 3, so Israel was joined to Baal of Peor, and the anger of the Lord was aroused against Israel. So Balaam wouldn't curse Israel. He wouldn't speak words of curse over them because God wouldn't give him permission. But what Numbers 31:16 indicates is that at some point after he did all these things and blessed them multiple times, even though Balak was like, no, don't bless them. They said, okay, I'll tell you what their shortfall is. I'll tell you how you can get them to compromise and how you can get them to worship your God instead of their God. It's kind of like this is what Superman's kryptonite is. All you have to do is get one of your pagan festivals going on there with your sacred prostitutes, and they'll worship that God because the temptation is strong enough. Now, the text only tells us that he gave them counsel. What I just said, I'm reading into the text, but it's pretty clearly there that he gave them some sort of advice, and the outcome of the advice is what we just read in Numbers 25, 1 through 3, that the children committed harlotry. That the text does say. In Jeremiah 23, verses 26 and 27, Jeremiah talks about the nature of a false prophet. He says, "How long will this be in the heart of the prophets who prophesy lies? Indeed, they are prophets of the deceit of their own heart, who try to make my people forget my name by their dreams, which everyone tells his neighbor, as their fathers forgot my name for Baal." What Jeremiah is saying here, there's a couple of things he's saying that I find interesting. One, I hear him saying that false prophets don't even necessarily realize that they're false prophets, because there is a deceit in their own hearts, so they believe what they're prophesying that is a false prophecy is real. Recently I was reading an author, I can't actually remember which author it was. It's either an author on the book of Revelation or just another commentary I was reading. But he made a comment about false prophets that I thought was interesting. He said, most people tend to think of a false prophet as somebody who prophesies a future event and it's incorrect and it doesn't happen, which I understand that association. He said, but if you really study what Scripture says about a false prophet, it's not so much that the prophecy is false, it's what direction is the prophet pointing the person. That a true prophet will point them to worship Jesus. A false prophet will point them to worship something other than Jesus. That's at the heart of true prophecy or false prophecy. So Jeremiah is talking, he says, indeed, they are prophets of the deceit of their own heart. There's something going on with Balaam. The word prophet is not used to describe Balaam. But obviously Balak knows that he is a man that has tapped into something spiritually, that if he blesses people, God will bless them, and if he curses people, God will curse them. And so Balak wants to tap into that. But there's also this idol, and the idea behind idolatry, which we talked about not that long ago, is that it's something that has become a higher priority to us, that we love more, that we worship more than God. And it appears that Balaam's issue is that he loves money more than he loves God. And that's the reason why the angel of the Lord is standing against him. I mean, I don't know how many people that would see the angel of the Lord and would continue down a path and do the things that Balaam did. I think most people would say, okay, I just saw an angel of the Lord. I just had a donkey talk to me. I'm going to go home now.